Hey, what's good everybody? Today's going to be a relatively short video just covering some of the things and potential errors that I may have made in the faceplant review. I sent that Kilohearts review out specifically to Kilohearts themselves, and they have just been awesome as far as customer service goes and have actually responded to a lot of the, I guess, critiques or comments that I have made regarding their synth with faceplant and multipass. So what I wanted to do today was to kind of clear some of that up. I wanted to explain to some of the things that they've told me and kind of show you guys something that you may or may not have known about. So let's go ahead and open up faceplant. And off the bat, I'm really just going to start reading off some of the things that they talked about that I can cover within this video. So one of the big ones is playing notes while having slice or a different parameter open. So if you have an effect that opens up a secondary window, such as something like slice EQ, whenever you open this up and you try to play a note with your QWERTY keyboard, if you don't have a MIDI controller like I don't anymore, then you can't actually play any notes on it. So their response to that was actually that it's a bug, so don't worry about it. That's something that's coming into the works. As of now, there isn't really a fix for it just yet, but they told me to sit tight and they're going to work that out. The second thing that we're going to cover is the low frequency. So as I covered before in the other video, you can only go down to 0.10 hertz. And they have actually had that as a common feature request, and they said that they might add a very low frequency oscillator at some point, but again, no promises of when or where. So you can actually pretty much keep dividing this though if you add another LFO and turn this all the way down and then have this automate this even more, so you can actually kind of like divvy that up. The other thing that you can do that might also even be a better option is you can actually just use this as a means of making this time even slower, because you can see how slow this is in its own right. So if you want to be precise, then that's a way, but those are just a couple of easy tricks that you can use to work around. One other thing that they covered is the amount of filter types, which is probably going to be the highlight of what this video is. If you pull up a filter, then we have our basic filter, which is 7 different, I guess, shapes, and then we also have our formant filter as well, and also our comb filter. So we have this one and then also our comb filter. So one thing that I was talking about was the biggest difference between Serum and faceplant is that Serum has a lot more dedicated filter types as opposed to faceplant. What I didn't realize was that you can create your own custom filters within Slice EQ, and this is kind of what we're going to dive into very quickly. And we're going to go ahead and just open up an instance of Slice EQ, and what you're going to see is that anytime you create some kind of shape, let's say I have a bell or so, there's a little tab over here on the right that you can pull up that can actually be automated, which I had no idea about. So this is actually one of the coolest things that I've seen that has been something that I've been wishing for on a synth for a very long time. And the reason why this is so important is because we can essentially do a lot of the stuff that you may have seen me do on my other videos as far as filter types goes, all within faceplant. So here's a typical band boost with 2 notches, and we can set up an LFO and do our same kind of stuff that we have within this. And by the way, I also mentioned that sometimes the LFO can be a bit wonky, but I found that if you hold Command on a Mac, then you can actually just draw stuff in like this, and it makes it a lot easier to do. Turning off the magnetic function, I believe, is what that does. And so if you don't want to do that, you can just turn that off in general and then kind of make that go. So that's okay. I'm just going to set this to a really slow rate, and this is just for a means of demonstration, but we can start to automate all of these, as you'll see. And now we have a pretty insane custom filter that we can use to automate. So I will argue that doing this on something like FabFilter Pro Q is probably, it looks neater, but one really cool feature that they added about this is that even though this is moving, all of the nodes are staying in place, and when you do this in FabFilter, they all move in real time because it's being automated outside of the box. But look, you can see that moving on its own. So one other thing that's cool is that if I make a copy of this, while these are already kind of being a duplicate version, I can go and move these around to their own being and basically change things around into changing the automation. And that's something that is also pretty neat as well. And this goes all the way up to apparently 96. Yeah, so it's got a 96 dB slope up to, which is pretty cool, and it also has mid-side features as well. So this is a big deal for me because I do a lot of filtering this way, not just with something like FabFilter, but also from the Morph filter on Ableton stock plugins. And having the ability to do this not only within FacePlant but multipass as well is something that to me is pretty significant, especially when you're trying to do complex movements. So I'll just kind of show you here. Now we did talk about on multipass that you don't have any multi-stage envelopes, but they did say that that's something that they're working on, and they didn't tell me when, but they said that it will have an update relatively soon. So all the stuff that we can do within FacePlant of the multi-stage envelope generators, we can also do on this as well. So I'll change that, do the same thing here, and you'll see that I can also automate this in the same way that we were able to on FacePlant, which is just super duper cool. So like imagine how much you can do with that, not just with one, but doing this in a multi-band stage as well. And you can start to see that you can get some pretty crazy things without having to dive into too many plugins. And to me, that's really important because if I can have everything in one window, then my workflow can speed up significantly. So while I'm not so worried about how this particular sound is going to be in general, I did want to bring that to attention. The last thing that I want to cover regarding all of this is the finicky knobs that I had mentioned. While they are still somewhat a little bit fiddly, I did forget to mention that you can always double click on something. So if I have some kind of automation right here and I go, to this or whatever, and it's not to my liking, I can kind of right click on this and then I can change this to whatever I want to do. So I can go there, I can right click on the detune and put that to whatever specific amount I want. So yeah, I know that this isn't going to be like a complex bass patch or whatever, but I wanted to show you one of the biggest capabilities that FacePlant has to offer that was kind of swept under the rug, to be honest, and I didn't know was even possible. I think that that should be something significant that you guys can go and play with. I have made plenty of patches and project files up on Patreon already for you guys to kind of dive into that features this kind of stuff. I wanted to also thank Kilohearts for just being such an amazing support team and for just pretty much everything. Like, they're really everything that you could ask for as far as a company that's trying to deliver a product to make their customers happy. So thank you, Kilohearts, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate my viewers as well for sitting through this, and hope this boosts your creative workflow. Happy producing.